Please check out my latest book, Puma Punku and Tiwanaku, Strangest Ancient Site on Earth. Yes, it's another adventure with hiddenincatours.com. So this is the highway that leads from La Paz in Bolivia to Tiwanaku and Puma Punku. It takes about 2 hours to get from La Paz to Tiwanaku. And there you see the Andes in the background. And the road is actually in quite good shape because they're actually expanding it. So eventually it'll be a 4-lane highway between La Paz and Lake Titicaca. And with us always, Irene Flores and Gustavo Morales. So as we inch closer and closer to Tiwanaku and Puma Punku, you see the flatness and somewhat barrenness of the Altiplano. We're at approximately 13,000 feet above sea level. And this is the actual entry gate. I don't know if at one time it was a toll booth, but doesn't look like it's very active and hasn't been that way for at least 15 years. So what you're going to see on the left coming up is Puma Punku, and 90% of the visitors to Tiwanaku do not visit Puma Punku because they think it's simply a pile of rocks, but they're the ones missing out. And this is the little dirt road that leads to Tiwanaku, which is off to the right. This is where the museum and the bathrooms are, and this is where you buy your ticket. So here we are, entering Puma Punku, trip number 60 possibly for me. Every time I visit here, I always learn something new. And with us always as well, Antonio Portugal, famous author who lives in La Paz. So already we're seeing artifacts. You see this partially sunken stone. Don't know what the actual dimensions are, but we're going to see signs of cataclysmic activity that happened at Puma Punku many thousands of years ago. And this is the most recent excavation. They've only dug down about 2.5 feet. And when you ask them, why don't you dig deeper? They say there is nothing deeper than that. So I think they're hiding mysteries underneath Puma Punku. There in the middle of the picture are 2 of the famous H blocks. There are 8 in total. And this is an absolutely amazing stone. The stone is material is andesite. You see the perfectly routed groove, and then the holes, which are all of the same dimension and perfectly spaced one from another. This is clearly ancient machining. And these are the massive foundation blocks, most of them made of red sandstone, with the quarry being 9 miles or about 15 kilometers away. And then also this massive slab of andesite. The quarry for that is about 45 miles or 70 kilometers away. And note this huge slab on the left, which is partially sunken. Again, another probable example of lost ancient cataclysm. There are 2 more of the famous H blocks. And all of these precision cut stones, there's the weird left turn signal. Nobody knows what it actually represents. And here are some of the magnetic anomalies that we are studying. This is in the center of one of the H blocks. Notice the compass moves 180 degrees and then 90 degrees more, and then becomes somewhat erratic. So no one understands fully what is going on with the magnetism here. It's not simply the fact that the stone contains magnetite. It means that the magnetism has been altered. Possibly it relates to the shapes of the H blocks and other stones themselves. And then here we have Dr. Ken on the stone that has the groove in it with the holes. Again, notice what happens to the compass needle. Absolutely amazing. And now Dr. Ken takes the compass on top of the stone that has the groove and the holes. And fortunately, we're going back in October of this year to take more measurements. Now, another curious thing about the H blocks is that they're not all the same shape and size. As you look at the backs, you can see differences. So they were not all made in the same mold, or in fact in a mold of any kind. What would you make the mold out of? And as we approach one of the finished H blocks, notice the somewhat crisp corners and the little false door. And this H block was actually never completed. It doesn't have the false door, and the corners are rounded. So at least two different kinds of technology were involved in its construction. And now Dr. Ken is measuring the width. And none of them are of the same width. They are up to 1 inch difference. So again, that's an indication that each one was crafted individually. They were not made in a mold of any kind, and they were not all cranked out by some specific dimension. So here's Antonio Portugal, and he has a Gauss meter. And so let's see, with the intense sunlight at Puma Punku, what the Gauss meter is doing. It's in fact going all over the place. Now Antonio is on the front. And again, notice what's happening with the compass and also the Gauss meter. Very dramatic shifts. So what on earth is going on here? And then over the top with the Gauss meter, again, the stone with the groove in it. Dramatic changes. And then here again, we're looking into the recent excavation, I believe done by Russians. And all of these stones you can see were found exactly where they sit, as if a cataclysmic action happened here. And now we're looking at the perimeter of Puma Punku. The first 4 layers are red sandstone, and the upper layer, much of which is missing, is the magnetic andesite. So is it possible that the original function of Puma Punku was the creation of an energetic field of some kind, so that the energy inside was different from the outside? And if so, why would it have been created for that? You see the tight fitting of the stone without any mortar or clay whatsoever. That is a Tiwanaku construction you see on the right. The Tiwanaku were in this location from about 100 to about 1000 AD. And here you see the cornerstone, again, is the magnetic andesite on top of 4 neutral layers of the red sandstone. Again, this is a recent excavation that you see. And much of Puma Punku still appears to remain buried. Why have they not continued to do more excavations? Now, this debris field that you see once was the wall of the perimeter of Puma Punku. And this is what it supposedly originally looked like. The andesite quarry is that very far distant mountain, again, 45 miles or 70 kilometers away. And now we're going to come up to an ancient staircase. 12,000 years ago, the level of Lake Titicaca would have been at the bottom step. And you can also see the massive weathered stones that make up this staircase. And then what we have on the right is probably Tiwanaku culture repair work, or maybe even repairs done by the archaeologists possibly in the 1960s, but unlikely. And this area here, I do not believe has been excavated. So it looks like Puma Punku was buried by some kind of massive cataclysm that created a tsunami from Lake Titicaca and buried the site. This stone, which is very complicated, made of the gray andesite, is lying in a field, and look at the precision flatness of the surfaces. Almost laser flat. The right angle square does not wobble whatsoever. You cannot see light between the bottom of the edge and the stone itself. So this had to have been done utilizing some kind of lost ancient high technology. And here, utilizing a magnet, is Valerie. And look at what the compass needle is doing as she touches different surfaces of this stone. This is a brand new discovery that Valerie made on our trip in June of 2018, and obviously something that will be done by us in the future on our return trips. Again, the first one likely being in October of this year, 2018. So again, very intriguing. The needle should follow the magnet, but it's not really doing that in most cases. Here's Dr. Ken. Now you see that the actual needle is following the magnet, but then when Valerie touches the surfaces, it's doing very strange things. So this will take a lot more study. We're now at the location of Tiwanaku proper. Tiwanaku and Puma Punku are contemporary sites. They were built most likely at the same time, but it was the Tiwanaku culture 2,000 years ago that discovered Tiwanaku in ruins, and they decided to make a major center there. Now these two giant stones, the first one was lying face down, that's why the surface is quite fine, and the other one was facing the other way, and so that surface is quite heavily weathered. And this is the first time that I've noticed the possibility of scorch marks on the stone. Now you'll notice that the corners here are rounded, so it's likely the same with the H block that we saw, that this was never completed. One kind of machine went in and did the rough cutting, and then another machine was brought in to create the dramatic sharp angles or sharp corners. And now Dr. Ken again with the compass. We're getting interesting activity at the center, and once again there are many of the andesite blocks which show magnetic anomalies. And this is the subject, or the major subject, of my studies at this location of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku. So what Dr. Ken is showing you now is the natural magnetism of the area. And then when he comes close to the stone, again, about a 180-degree change. This is another example of the devastating breakage or cataclysmic damage that happened at both Tiwanaku and Puma Punku. This giant block was snapped into two pieces. And now we're going to examine the very strange weathering on the large megalithic stones here at the Kalasasaya complex at Tiwanaku. Now this wall was reconstructed in the 1960s, I would say quite foolishly by archaeologists because they did not register where the stones were taken from. But look at the extreme curved weathering of the monolithic blocks. This looks literally like water erosion, like waves lapping up against the stone over the course of thousands of years. And again, if we look back 12,000 years ago, it's quite likely that the lake was at this level, that the Cataclysmic complex was an enclosure and it was surrounded by water. What else can explain this kind of weathering? It's clearly not any kind of wind and sand erosion. It looks like water. Once again, look at the extent of the erosion. And as we turn around the corner, again, a massive andesite monolith. And you see the curvature and the erosion. Now, for some strange reason, on this side, the monoliths are made of the red sandstone. So they seem to alter. Two sides are andesite, and actually I think two sides are andesite, and the other two sides are the red sandstone. Again, I see water erosion happening here. Waves lapping up against the large stone blocks over the course of thousands of years. And there's no way that this site can be dated at being simply 2,000 years old. The sign of lost ancient high technology and all of the weathering and the strange erosion patterns, supposedly, I would think, done by water, would indicate a much, much older age to this complex. Now we come up to the most famous of the stones, the so-called Gate of the Sun. Look how fresh and clean the front surface is. Look how eroded the back surface is. So this giant 10-ton block was likely lying face down for thousands of years. The cataclysm snapped it into two pieces as if it was styrofoam, and then the Tiwanaku people discovered it roughly 2,000 years ago, and they propped it back up, and they did the incise carving on the surface, almost like scratches. Nothing, technically speaking, as compared to the actual shaping of the stone itself. So that is Tiwanaku culture work on megalithic ancient stone. So these are new books of mine at Amazon.com. Puma Punku and Tiwanaku, strangest ancient site on Earth. I would say it's definitely one in the top 10. And then Lost Ancient Technology of Peru and Bolivia, Volume 2. This site is called Wadi in the highlands of Peru. Lost Ancient Technology of Egypt, Volume 2, including the Osiris Shaft, which we entered in March of 2018. Baalbek, Lebanon, Megaliths of the Gods. We return on tour in April 2019. Children of the Pharaohs, a brief history of the Copts of Egypt. The Coptic Christians are the descendants of the dynastic people. Beyond the Black Sea, the mysterious practice of Peru, including all of the DNA results. And these are 2019 Hidden Inca tours that you can attend. All of our 2018 ones are full. Advanced Technologies and Wisdom of the Ancients tour of Egypt. Lots of megalithic work in India. Mexico, Ancient Technology tour in February 2019. Jordan, an Egypt extension tour including the Dead Sea and Petra. Lebanon, another Egypt extension tour including Baalbek and Byblos. Then Turkey in September 2019, including Göbekli Tepe, the underground cities of Cappadocia, and much more. And Peru and Bolivia in November 2019. Thanks for watching.